So when the Chris Paul trade initially went down, I think after Dub Nation got over the initial shock of it, it was like, all right, well, when you talked yourself into it, you're like, he'll come off the bench and run the second unit and finally be, that balance and that backup point guard that we've been looking for a long time. And then Chris Paul shows up in Las Vegas for Summer League, right? And he's doing interviews. And when that's brought up to him, you remember, oh, you the coach? You the coach? And kind of suggested like that hadn't been discussed yet, right? And you're like, oh boy, here we go already, right? And then a couple weeks later, it came out that he said something along the lines of, yeah, I really, I'm leaving hope open that I still get the opportunity to start, like I still want to start, right? Then Mark Spears, who is the senior NBA writer for ESPN, was on a podcast recently, and he said, quote, I do expect him to start, and I think it's like 5-minute spurts. I don't know that they really want his minutes to be high, but I think they're going to try it. I could be wrong, but that's the gist I'm getting. This isn't an opinion that he's expected to start. It's what I'm hearing. He's never not started in his career. Now, what you're going to hear is the Warriors starting five with Kevon, Splash Bros, Draymond, and Wiggins analytically has been the best starting five, had the best net rating for like the last 2 seasons. They just hadn't played much last year for, various reasons, right? And so that's the initial argument, like, why analytically would you break that up? You know the chemistry and the starts that they can get off to, right? Let me tell you about today's sponsor, Factor. The truth is, they make meeting your nutritional goals easier than ever. Fresh, never frozen food directly to your doorstep, all dietitian approved. Now, here we are in September already, right? The summer has gone by so quickly. I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, it's the fall and the holiday season that's most difficult to stick to a nutritional program. You're running around, you're shopping, holiday food is starting to show up, right? That's why I'm grateful to have Factor this season, because not only is it convenient, cost efficient, it's good. And they keep adding to the menu. If lunch is an issue, you don't have access to a microwave, you can get their effortless go meals, grain bowls with salad toppers. I've been using the Protein Plus meals after my workout, ensuring I'm getting the protein and sticking to the script, all super conveniently. And then I've thrown in the cold pressed juice. I'm someone who sips way too much coffee throughout the day. It's let me cut back on my caffeine, stay hydrated, and it just tastes better. So let Factor help you this fall stick to your nutritional goals. Head to factor75.com or click the link in the description and use the code Alchemy50 for 50% off your first box at Factor. Let's hypothetically talk about them gifting Chris Paul this starting role. The obvious person, odd man out, the sacrificial lamb, if you will, would be Kevon Looney, right? Because we've seen him come in and out of the starting lineup so often throughout his career, right? He's this interchangeable piece, this egoless super role player, and you just know that Looney would be all right with it, right? But now, not only are you super small, right? We already have rebounding and size issues. Not only are you asking Draymond to play more at the 5 spot, but essentially you're asking Steph to guard up, right? Because if Chris Paul is the starting point guard, that bumps Steph up 1 spot in the pecking order defending. You're going to ask Chris Paul to defend a bigger guard or wing, right? So it's this trickle-down effect when you adjust that lineup, particularly when you take size out of that lineup. And so the next person who, in theory, could come off the bench would be Andrew Wiggins, right? In theory. I don't think he's ever come off the bench in his career either, but he's a low maintenance guy, not a big ego guy. You could sell me on paper that Wiggs would be down, right? He got his contract, but now you'd be taking the best perimeter defender off the floor, the best point of attack defender off the floor, and essentially you'd be asking Klay to start on Luka Doncic, to start on Ja Morant, right? And listen, prime Klay, there's no problem with that, right? But this stage in his career, I don't know if you want to do that. I got another quote for you because Draymond comes out the other day and says this, quote, I look at this as one of the most important years of my career. It's not to redeem anything about Draymond. He's talking in the third person now. Okay, I see you. My goal is that we can help Chris Paul get his first championship. All right, bet, Draymond. So you come off the bench, Dre, right? Your goal is to help. Nah, right? It smells like finesse. It smells like finesse to me, right? Now, when you look at the trade itself, Poole for Chris Paul, we know they're very different people, very different players at very different spots in their career. But essentially, Chris Paul is stepping into the Jordan Poole role for the Warriors. And one number that you heard over and over again last season was the difference when Poole starts versus when he comes off the bench. We all know Poole played much better as a starter, right? Still, it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense to start him. They tried to do it when they could and fitted it in, but it just didn't make sense, right? And it makes even less sense for Chris Paul at this point in his career unless you're trying to increase his trade value, right? That would be the other slice of this. Are they trying to increase his trade value? You know, Pascal Siakam's name has been out there. And, you know, we know how quickly the landscape of available players changes in the NBA. All it takes is one demand, and then it's a domino effect, right? What if it's a young team like Orlando that's kind of looking to get over the hump and just taste the playoffs? I'm not going to sit here and say that I think that that's plan A for the Warriors, like it seemed like with D'Lo a couple of years ago, but it's certainly plan B, right? They're going to give this a try. But if it doesn't work, they also understand it's a large expiring contract and a guy that could help a lot of places, whether it's mentoring young teams or filling a vet role on a team ready to win, right? And so there's always that option. And, you know, maybe it's the optics of maintaining his value. Now, I'm not a fan of this. From the very beginning, it doesn't make sense. I don't want this to happen. I think it's a bad look if it does, not just schematically, but I think what it represents for the team and the chemistry, right? Because all we heard last year is the disconnect between the young players and the veterans. And, you know, putting the punch aside, we know how crazy that was, right? But it was as if the veterans weren't being held accountable like the young guys were defensively and all that stuff. It was preferential treatment, right? So you can't bring Chris Paul in here and all of a sudden gift him a starting spot when it doesn't make sense. I think it'll have a trickle-down effect. And I don't like it. I don't like it at all, right? Ultimately, it's up to Chris to fit in. It's not up to the Warriors to appease and make him happy. And you see the Draymond comments, again, a little bit of finesse. They got to feed his ego a little bit. I understand that. But ultimately, again, it's up to him to fit in. Now, is Chris Paul leaking this? Spears didn't just come up with this out of nowhere. It's what he's hearing. Is he hearing it from Chris Paul's camp? And is this a way of him trying to apply pressure to the Warriors? Like, I'm expected to start. I heard I was starting. Like, what are you talking about, right? Is that part of it? Because if it truly is coming from the Warriors side of things, I think it's a mistake. I think it's a mistake moving forward. I really do. Now, the other bit of news that's come out that may play into this is this new resting rule. It's officially been approved. NBA teams fighting back against load management, right? Last season, it was a certain amount of games you got to play to be eligible for all NBA and these bonuses and stuff like that. And now they're pushing back against resting multiple stars at one time. Now, the word star, the term star is kind of subjective, right? And there's a gray area of what that's considered. But so I don't know the exact details of it. If you're over 35 games played, there's all these prerequisites to apply. But from what I've read, the Warriors have 4 players that are considered stars in Steph, Chris Paul, Draymond, and Wiggins. So they can only rest one of those guys at a time. Klay, I'm guessing the 2 years with the Achilles and the ACL made him not eligible to be, quote, a star, just by games played. That's what I'm guessing here. Now, Wiggins, you know, what did he play? Half a season last year, right? He's in the prime of his career. He passed up on FIBA this summer. He should be well rested and ready to go, right? But I think that this could be possibly an opportunity to feed Chris Paul's ego a little bit and make him feel, you know, let him have a big night every now and then when you rest Steph, right? And so the swapping of resting Steph and Chris Paul is probably in their plans before this rule was even passed, right? And that, again, an opportunity every 2 weeks or so. Chris gets the start, you know, has a 10 assists plus night, 30 minutes or whatever. And it just, again, feed the ego. We all need that. I understand that. And so this new rule is definitely going to affect the Warriors when you consider the age of their core and how they're, probably going to try to load manage them and the depth or perceived depth that we don't have right now. But yeah, man, I'm not with this Chris Paul starting news. I think that they should have shut it down right from the gate. They should have had the conversation right there in Vegas. Hey, man, that it doesn't make sense. This is what we envision for you, instead of trying to finesse it and this and that and not being clear about it, because what it does is it leaves people like me and us, the fan base, to speculate, and it builds a narrative. If they would have just been clear from the beginning, Chris is coming off the bench, we wouldn't be talking about it, and he could accept it and buy in, or they could look to get him out of there, right? But I'll leave you with this, because I said this initially when this conversation was brought up in July. It's not who starts. Say it with me, it's who finishes, right? We all know that. And so, yeah, the starting for 5 minutes or something, it may not make or break them, but who's on the floor in crunch time? And I have a hard time envisioning Chris Paul sitting on the bench in crunch time, waving a towel and rooting on Steph and them, right? Even though that a lot of nights that might be what it should be when you consider the size issues. And so I think that that's a bigger concern moving forward, as opposed to who's starting, if it's that 5 minutes or not. But yeah, they should have shut it down. They should have been clear from the start. I think that that's a misstep. Before I talk a little bit of Niners, like I promised I would, I'm going to ask y'all, hit the bell, subscribe, thumbs up, thumbs down. It doesn't matter. But if you're enjoying the content, support me by helping me in the algorithms. I said I recently got demonetized. And so, yeah, the system isn't exactly working for me right now, but your support, your time, your viewership is always greatly appreciated. Let's talk a little bit about this Niner gang, fam. Whoo-wee, what a start. What a start to week one. What I got cut off in yesterday's video, I don't know how that happened. What I was saying is that I've been covering the Niner games on my Patreon, about 15, 16-minute clips over game highlights. I'm by no means an X's and O's like football guru guy, but I'm a fan, and I've been watching a long time, and I have some takes on it. So something to check out. What are my thoughts? What are my thoughts of game one, that dominant performance? Listen, I'm really excited about the D-line again, because I think part of the storyline headed into the season was obviously the Bosa holdout, which is done, but it was the depth. That how deep is this defensive line? We know they like to rotate them and use a lot of guys, and you had Clelin Ferrell and Drake Jackson in game one just show up on the edge there, right? Hargrave looked the part, right? Hargrave and Armstead looked like a problem up the middle. You saw a lot of pressure right up the middle in the pocket, didn't let Pickett stay in the pocket. That made him very uncomfortable, because he clearly doesn't want to scramble, right? But Ferrell and Drake Jackson, both with sacks and pressures, and they have that length, right? That Aldon Smith reach. Not his talent, right? But that same kind of body type and archetype where they can extend out and get a fingertips or trip down the quarterback. And so if those guys are going to reach their potential with Kasarik in this defensive line, it starts with Bosa and Armstead setting the tone. And they're going to be back to, that Super Bowl year of dominance with that defensive line. I think that is the recipe in this league right now, where you look at how pass-happy teams are and how high-powered offenses are. If you have a dominant defensive line, that is the counter. Brock Purdy. I told you he's nice, man. I'm not the only one, right? But there was this there was a lot of skepticism, and there was a lot of weird narratives and talks around this Lance Purdy situation. I think people got out of pocket and they got in their feelings and didn't really objectively see what they saw or remember what they saw with Purdy, right? Composure, accuracy, mobility, and anticipation. He doesn't have a cannon, right? We know that, especially when he tries to go outside the numbers. But his decisiveness and his anticipation in the ball placement makes up for it. It's there on time. And he has that knack to kind of buzz it by the defender's ears. He's going to throw some picks. There's no doubt about it, because you can tell he's not as conservative. He's not as risk averse as some of these past quarterbacks we've had. But I think a lot of these throws where you're like, oh, that could have been picked. Oh, that was almost. I don't think it's an accident. I think that he's just that accurate with the ball. If he can stay healthy, man, I think he can be a Drew Brees caliber quarterback. I really do, where he's not like the true elite, but he's just a notch below. And on any given Sunday, he can go against one of those guys and win. Granted, his team's good enough around him, but I really do. But if he can stay healthy is the key word. There was that scare with the fumble. Watt got to him way more than I would have liked to seen, and there's this clip making the rounds on YouTube where Kyle was asked about it and Kyle giving him love and stuff like that. One thing that I think it may be a flaw in Kyle's principle or just mindset is what I see is he doesn't seem to respect elite pass rushers like he needs to. We saw it in the NFC Championship game, and you saw it last Sunday with Watt, where it's like, hey, dude, bring somebody else over there. Bring somebody else over there. And what it seems like to me is the answer is always you got to get rid of it quicker. You got to get rid of it quicker. I understand that, cool. But how about you just keep someone in the backfield or you bring a tight end over there? It seems like he doesn't ever want to compromise his scheme and play calling to like max protect or just get some extra protection on the quarterback. He's just get it out quicker. Just get it out quicker. And so that concerns me. That concerns me. I just think that that's a tendency of his. The other thing that was a bit concerning was the load from Christian McCaffrey, right? Carrying the ball well into the fourth quarter. I guess the pushback would be those other backs. I'm not so sure how well they pass protect. That might be part of it. But yeah, I mean, we're talking about load management and resting stars in the NBA. The CMC, we know what type of game breaker he is. They got to manage that, man, because he's not going to do it himself. We know how these guys are built. These players are not going to do it themselves. And that's why you have a stable of running backs. So I thought that was a curious decision. But all in all, I mean, to go into Pittsburgh and have, that type of performance, the bullies of the NFC right now, a little bit of a trap game. Is it Sunday, the Rams, right? The Rams snuck up on Seattle. McVay has something extra sauce for Kyle. So I feel like it's a little bit of a trap game, but their talent should overwhelm as long as they're dialed in. Yeah, the last thing was special teams. Dude, that I don't know what's going on with that, but Pittsburgh almost broke 2 or 3 of them, and it's just been an ongoing issue for years. Their kickoff coverage and punt coverage, I got to fix that, man. But those are my thoughts on week 1 from the Niners. Yeah, hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.